Disclaimer: this content is intended for a mature audience only. Viewer discretion is advised. The night was quieter than usual, the kind of silence that presses close against the skin and makes every breath sound louder than it should. She stood by the half-open window, the dim glow of the streetlight brushing across her face, softening the edges of her thoughts. Her heart was steady but heavy, carrying unspoken things that only silence seemed to understand. When she felt his presence behind her, it wasn't sudden, it was slow, like a tide drawing in, unhurried yet undeniable. He reached out, not with words but with touch. His arms circled her waist, pulling her gently into the warmth of his chest. She let herself lean back, just enough to feel the certainty of him, the strength in the way he held her. It should have been ordinary, a husband embracing his wife, but in the hush of that moment, it felt like something more. There was a weight in the embrace, a question hidden in his silence, and she wasn't sure if she had the strength to answer it. Her breath caught when she realized he wasn't just holding her. The closeness was different, intentional, intimate in a way that carried both comfort and confusion. She thought he was only hugging her, thought it was just a fleeting reassurance. But then, the pressure of his body shifted, and she knew he had entered into a space between them that was far more fragile, far more vulnerable. The truth is, she didn't resist. Instead, her heart stumbled between fear and longing. Was it wrong to let herself want this? Was it wrong to crave the closeness of the man she had already promised her life to? Inside her, a quiet war began, the part of her that remembered duty and control, and the part of her that had always hungered for this very fire he carried into her soul. He didn't speak. And she couldn't. Words would have broken the spell, scattered the fragile mystery of what was happening between them. His silence was heavy, but so was his touch, and she let it guide her into a place she didn't yet have the courage to name. And in that stillness, with the world hushed around them, she asked herself the one question she feared most: was this just love, or was it something far more dangerous? Her body stayed still, but inside her thoughts tumbled like scattered leaves in the wind. His embrace had always been her shelter, a safe place to rest her weariness. But tonight, it was different, charged with something that unsettled her heart. She wondered if he knew how much she noticed the subtle shifts in him, the way his breath lingered at her neck, the way his hold seemed to speak more than any words could. It was as though he was telling her a secret without opening his mouth, a secret she wasn't sure she was ready to hear. She remembered the early days of their love, when everything was new, when laughter filled the corners of their home like sunlight streaming through sheer curtains. Back then, she trusted the simplicity of their closeness. But time had made her cautious. Routine, small disappointments, the silence of unsaid feelings, these had settled between them like dust on old furniture. She had grown used to it, but now, with him standing behind her, she realized she missed the hunger of being wanted. His arms tightened slightly, as if afraid she might pull away. But she didn't. She stayed. Because part of her, the part she had buried under years of steady composure, wanted to feel this again, the raw, unspoken truth of being desired not just as his wife but as the woman she was before marriage defined her. She wondered if he felt the same longing, if he too carried the ache of what had gone unsaid. He still hadn't spoken, and his silence pressed against her more than his touch. She wished he would say her name, whisper something simple that would make this moment less of a mystery. But maybe words weren't enough. Maybe words would only lessen the intensity of what was happening between them. So she stood there, caught in the pull of his closeness, breathing in the quiet storm of emotions that threatened to undo her carefully kept calm. Her eyes closed as her thoughts drifted between fear and tenderness. Was this the beginning of something new between them, or the unveiling of what had always been hidden beneath the surface? She couldn't tell. All she knew was that her heart was racing in a way it hadn't for years. And in that fragile, suspended moment, one question echoed in her mind: if I give in, will it save us, or break us forever? Her breath grew shallow as memories began to weave themselves into the silence of that embrace. She remembered nights when she lay awake while he slept peacefully beside her, wondering if love was supposed to feel so still, so unchanged. She had once promised herself never to let routine dull the brightness of their bond, yet somewhere along the years, life had pressed its weight on them, responsibilities, unspoken disappointments, the quiet erosion of time. And now, this moment between them felt like the fragile spark that could either rekindle the fire or burn them both. He, too, carried his own quiet storms. He had always been steady, the one she leaned on, but inside him was a fear he rarely spoke aloud, the fear of losing her heart, not to another man, but to distance, to silence, to the emptiness that sometimes stretched between them even when they shared the same bed. Tonight, when he held her, he wasn't only seeking closeness, he was reaching for reassurance, for proof that she still belonged not just beside him but with him, wholly and willingly. She sensed it in the way his touch lingered, searching, hesitant yet insistent. He was asking her a question without words, "Do you still choose me?" And though she felt the answer trembling inside her, fear kept it locked behind her lips. For love was not always soft, sometimes it carried the weight of doubt, the ache of not knowing if two hearts still beat in rhythm. A flicker of the past rose unbidden, a night of laughter with friends, when she had caught him watching her from across the room. His gaze had been filled with admiration, pride, and something deeper that she had almost forgotten. It reminded her that once, before the quiet settled in, he had looked at her like she was the center of his world. That memory pressed against her heart now, urging her not to let the silence win. Yet another thought haunted her: what if they had changed too much? What if this moment was not a return to love but a desperate attempt to hold on to something already slipping away? The uncertainty tightened around her chest, making her wonder if desire alone could mend what time had worn thin. And as his breath warmed her skin, her heart whispered the truth she was too afraid to voice: "I want this closeness, but I don't know if I can trust it." The air between them thickened, heavy with the weight of things neither dared to say aloud. Her body leaned into his without thought, but her mind raced with questions she couldn't outrun. His embrace was firm now, no longer tentative. It was as though he was drawing her back to him, back to a place they had both forgotten how to reach. Every small shift of his hands against her waist sent waves of longing and doubt crashing together inside her. She wanted to speak, to ask him what he was really seeking in this closeness. Was it comfort? Desire? A plea for the love they had both let slip into silence? Her lips parted, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she let her eyes close, surrendering to the pull of the moment even as fear whispered against her ear. If she let this go further, if she gave in fully, there would be no turning back from what it meant. He rested his forehead gently against the curve of her neck, his breath warm and uneven. That simple gesture unraveled her more than any passion could. It wasn't hunger she felt from him, it was need. A need to be seen, to be chosen again. The realization struck her deeply, piercing through the walls she had carefully built around her heart. She had thought herself the only one starving for more, but now she understood he, too, had been waiting, aching, hoping she might still reach for him. Her fingers twitched as if they wanted to touch his hand, to reassure him, to say without words, "I'm still here." But the hesitation held her frozen. What if the reassurance wasn't enough? What if her silence had already pushed them too far apart? The thought hollowed her chest even as her body longed to close the distance fully. A shiver ran through her when he finally whispered, almost inaudible, "Don't pull away." It was not a command, it was a plea. His voice cracked in a way that startled her, raw and human, stripped of the steady calm he always wore. That fracture in him broke something inside her too, and her heart surged toward him even as her doubts clawed at her ribs. And in that fragile, trembling moment, she realized the truth. What lay between them was not only love or desire, it was the terrifying possibility of losing each other if they could not find the courage to bridge the silence. Her breath caught at his whispered plea, but before she could respond, the moment shifted. A faint sound from the living room, a clock chiming the late hour, reminded her of the world outside their embrace. Time had moved on without them for so long, and now it seemed to be pressing them toward a decision neither felt ready to make. She swallowed hard, feeling the weight of years pressing against her chest. Slowly, she turned her head, just enough to glimpse him from the corner of her eye. His face was so close, his expression raw in a way she had not seen in years. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, desperate to leap but terrified of the fall. In his eyes, she saw not only desire, but fear of her silence, fear that he had already lost her. And in that gaze, something inside her cracked. "I don't know if I can give you what you're asking for," she whispered, her voice trembling. The confession slipped out before she could stop it, a truth pulled straight from the depths of her uncertainty. Her words froze him. His hold did not loosen, but she felt his breath falter against her skin, heavy with the sting of what she had admitted. But then, something unexpected happened. Instead of retreating, he held her tighter, not out of force, but out of desperation. "I'm not asking for perfection," he murmured, his voice breaking in places she had never heard before. "I just need to know you haven't given up on me. On us." Her chest ached, because she hadn't. She knew she hadn't. And yet, the part of her that had learned to live with quiet disappointment feared that hope was more dangerous than despair. Hope meant risking everything, risking another fracture, another silence. But when his words reached her, the truth was undeniable. She still wanted them, still wanted him, even if it scared her more than anything. Tears welled, though she fought them back, because crying would mean admitting how much of herself she had locked away. And with that realization came a deeper twist. Maybe the real distance between them had never been about him not reaching for her, it had been about her not daring to reach back. Her tears slipped free before she could stop them, warm trails marking the truth she had tried for too long to bury. His arms tightened once more, but this time she didn't resist. Instead, she turned fully toward him, pressing her hands against his chest as though to steady herself. His heart beat hard beneath her palms, strong yet trembling, mirroring the storm in her own. "I never gave up on you," she whispered, her voice breaking, "but I did stop believing you still needed me." The words shattered the silence between them, falling heavy and raw. His eyes widened, pain flashing across his face like lightning across a dark sky. Without hesitation, he cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away the tears that clung to her skin. "Needed you?" His voice cracked, filled with a depth that startled her. "You've been my anchor through everything. I was afraid I had stopped being enough for you." That confession pierced her deeper than she expected. She realized then that the quiet distance between them had been born not from lack of love, but from fear, each believing they had somehow failed the other. All the years of silence, of small misunderstandings, of words swallowed instead of spoken, had been walls they built together without meaning to. And now, with their hearts laid bare, those walls began to crumble. She let herself fall into his embrace, not as a surrender but as a choice. The weight she had carried lifted, replaced by a fragile hope she hadn't dared feel in so long. Their closeness no longer felt like a question, it felt like an answer. But then came the twist, quiet yet profound. As her head rested against his chest, she felt his breath hitch, not from desire, but from emotion he had kept hidden. "I thought, if I held you too close, I'd scare you away," he confessed softly. "So I kept my distance, hoping you'd come to me on your own. I never realized the silence hurt you more than my fear ever could." She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, her tears now mingling with a trembling smile. "Then let's stop being afraid," she whispered. "Let's stop letting silence speak for us." And in that moment, under the hush of night and the glow of moonlight, their love didn't just survive, it was reborn, fragile yet fierce, tender yet unbreakable. The night stretched on quietly after their confessions, but the silence between them no longer carried the weight it once did. Instead, it felt alive, filled with a tenderness that neither had allowed themselves to feel in far too long. She leaned against him, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. It was a sound she had heard countless times before, yet tonight, it felt like rediscovering a melody she had forgotten how to love. His hand smoothed gently over her hair, a simple gesture that held more meaning than any grand declaration could. For years, they had both hidden behind strength, him with his steadiness, her with her composure, when what they needed most was the vulnerability they had finally shared. It was not passion alone that bound them, but the honesty of knowing each other's deepest fears and choosing to stay anyway. In that fragile space, she thought about the years ahead. They would still face moments of distance, of silence, of doubt. But now she knew they could face them together, not as two people afraid of losing each other, but as two people brave enough to reach through the quiet and find one another again. Their love would not be perfect, but it would be real, and perhaps that was the greater gift. He kissed her forehead softly, lingering there as if sealing a promise. "We'll be all right," he murmured, his voice steady now. She smiled against his chest, believing him for the first time in a long time. They had not just survived the night, they had found a way to begin again. Outside, the moonlight slowly gave way to the first hints of dawn. The world was still, yet inside their hearts something had shifted, something permanent and true. She knew that when the sun rose, life would continue with all its ordinary trials, but they would carry this night with them always, a reminder that love is not lost in silence, but reborn when two souls dare to speak their truth. And as they held each other, the words that echoed silently between them were simple and everlasting: "We chose each other, again."